which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Communication and correspondence?
I have none this evening.
Remind the public that any public participation will be sent through our school board member, Beth Ealteri. That email address is ealteri@ellsworthschools.org. Item E under new business, we have item number 1, discussion and consideration of climate survey. And I believe Beth had sent that out to everybody today. It was just the revised piece so that it went to 3 different parties in the school department. Otherwise.
Yes,
I was
all the
asking-
questions were the same. It just, some of the surveys did not have all of the questions on them as they pertain to different people.
Yep.
And I am waiting to hear back from Anne about the cost of them collecting the surveys. So as soon as we hear that, I guess we could determine whether, I don't know if we need to wait to hear that as to, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah,
I think that the funding can be found in the
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that as an issue.
Right, and those that weren't part of the meeting before, the discussion was that all of the surveys will be collected by Woodrow.
Drummond and Woodson.
Drummond
Thank
and
you. My brain. So all of the survey results would be collected by them. They would put the board together a report that would have basically the synopsis. And then if specific surveys wanted to be seen, we could request that, but otherwise it will help with keeping things anonymous, but also 300 surveys is a lot of surveys to collect and compile the data ourselves, so.
Yep, okay, great. So I'd like to make an motion to approve the Ellsworth School Department Climate Survey as presented and to authorize distribution of the survey through Drummond and Woodson.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item number 2 is discussion and consideration of authorizing the Personnel Committee to act on behalf of the school board and confirming teacher nominations in the month of April. I think this is kind of going to go without saying. If we can hire some candidates in between our meetings, that's going to be very helpful for the school department. And Dan had mentioned tonight there some things in work.
If it would be helpful to the board, Personnel Committee is Paul and Kelly. Be watching your emails over the next couple of days.
Great. Awesome.
Will do.
All right. So I'll make a motion to authorize the Personnel Committee to act on behalf of the school board in confirming teacher nominations in the month of April.
Second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item number 3 is discussion and consideration of plans to increase in-person instruction in the Ellsworth schools. Presentations?
And I think the plan tonight was to have our administrators come up and they gave presentations at the Return to In-Person Instruction Committee meeting, really detailed presentations, and they've been working since that committee meeting to fill in some of the blanks, things that they're working on, and they're prepared to present and update that for the board and the community this evening.
All right, great.
So I think we drew straws at our administrative meeting this morning. Mr. Clifford will go first.
All right, Dan, you're up.
You drew the short straw.
Yeah. Good evening. So a little bit of an update as more surveys are coming in, and our teachers are calling parents that did not fill out the survey because we really are looking for those numbers, those definite numbers. So as of right now, we have 510 students. We have 63 students that are fully remote. Last week at this time we had 51, and we have 59 students that would be in the hybrid, and last week at this time we had 50. So those numbers are slowly going up a little bit, and the rest are planning to come back 5 days a week. As far as the plan overall, the bell schedule, so we would have the same bell schedule we're using right now. So that's 7 periods a day, 48-minute classes. 6 minutes between each class to wipe down desks, and have staggered dismissals so we don't have that much hall traffic. So that would work the same. And it's what we're used to, and it's worked really well. We will return to our traditional class schedule and have focused learning every single day. Right now, Monday through Thursday, we don't have focused learning, and then we have the special Fridays where we have 3 of them. We go back to our original schedule. Now we have 5 focused learnings instead of 3, and that is very important. Lunch is in the cafeteria, the cafe, the AP room, and possibly half the gym. And the amount of kids that are coming back using half the gym is a definite possibility. PE will have room to use the other half of the gym, but as the weather gets better, they're outside all the time anyway. So it won't inhibit them to do, what they normally do curriculum-wise. They usually time that pretty well. And we've ordered 100 desks and 50 TV trays. So, before it was just going to be the TV trays. We thought that, with the COVID money, it'd be helpful to get desks because we do need to replace some desks. And so we thought we got more for the money by doing that. Those desks will last, 15, maybe 20 years. But we also did get some TV trays, especially to use them in the gymnasium. It'd just be easier that way. Use COVID funds to look and hire for another mental health counselor. And that's, it's going to be a transition for these kids, especially remote coming 5 days a week. And it will be kind of like the first day of school for them if everyone decides to come back. And we do need those supports. There are some students that, with the mental health we've seen since last March, that are worse off than they were before. And we just want to make sure that we have supports for them when they come back. Our second floor bathroom will be reopened. Right now it's closed, so we'll reopen that. Our life skills room, it's too small for everybody to return, but we do have some options for some room changes, and we're working with a couple teachers trying to make that decision right now where it'll be. 2 to 3 classes are too big for the classrooms periods 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So those classes will have to move to the AP room, possibly the auditorium if it's not being used, the cafeteria or cafe, and possibly the library. We did some measuring with the library. That could be a possibility also. So just to let you know, if you hear or a parent tells you that their child's English class is in the cafeteria, that's true. That we may have to use that because some classes are going to be too big number-wise to have them in their classrooms. The vaccinations. So just looking at a timeline, so many of our staff had their first vaccination, and their next one is going to be the first or second week in April. That was one of the things that I got feedback from the teachers is, they just feel better having their second shot and then the 2 weeks after the second shot. So if we did wait until after April vacation, they would be fully vaccinated, and they felt a lot better about that. If we started before that, we would have to start with some teachers, and they would teach fully remote, and we'd have to get subs for their classrooms just because of different health reasons and age and things like that. The contact tracing, and it's fresh because we had this yesterday, but I think it's really important to remember that when we have a contact tracing, and I'll just take you through the process because a lot of people don't know what the process is like. So if we have, somebody that's positive in the school, we've had 4 so far, and on average, it's anywhere between 4 and 6 hours to identify everybody, okay, and make the phone calls home and get the information into the CDC, all of that. And really what the process is we follow that child throughout the day on our video cameras. Obviously, we have the class rosters of all the classes that they're in and who was there, and we have to check every kid's attendance. And lunch and study hall and going through the hallways, we're just tracing that kid everywhere he or she goes. And it's quite a process. And, you know, the outcome has usually been between 40 to 60 students and usually 7 or 8 staff members. That's what it's been. If we have everybody back, you know, you could probably pretty much double the population. You know, so instead of having 8 kids that have to go home for a close contact, now you're looking at 20. You know, so now you're talking 100 kids, you know, probably the same amount of staff members, 7 or 8. And, you know, that's what it would look like. And so it would affect a lot of kids. And that's what I'm really nervous about, you know, because we would have 110 kids home for a couple of days. It would probably take twice as long to identify everybody. So it may be a situation where, you know, this happens at 3 o'clock, we get the information, we start looking. You know, we may have to continue that the next day and just go fully remote, you know, like we are now for a day or two till we have all the contacts done. And then we can return to school and have enough subs and all of that. So, I mean, that is something to think about. You know, it will be bigger. You're just talking about more kids. And, you know, and a shout out to parents, you know, if you can drive your child or if your child drives and you have that car, please have them drive, or if you can take them, that would be very, very helpful for our transportation. You know, the less kids a high school has on buses, you know, the better. So if at all possible, you can carpool with others, that would really be terrific. The other thing is, you know, the different cohorts. So we'll have a in-person cohort 5 days a week. We'll have a hybrid cohort, and then a fully remote. It's been easy for us now for students to go back and forth a little bit because we have room for 258 kids. And maroon right now, there's 182. And in gray, there's 177. So we have room, okay? So if a parent called and said, you know, could my kid change because of this, or they're remote and they want to go to hybrid, can they? And we've been able to the last couple of months. We couldn't at the beginning of the year because we were full. But then as the year progressed, we had more kids go remote. And I just need to plead with you this way is if you choose to come 5 days a week, you choose to go hybrid, you choose to go remote, you need to stay there the rest of the year because we're going to be full, okay, based on the surveys. So if Johnny tries remote, you know, for 2 weeks and it's not working out, we'll try to help Johnny, but there's no way he can come back to school. You're probably either hybrid or for five-person days. It'll really, really be difficult. You know, we're looking at, based on this information, you know, we're looking at 420 kids, 430 kids that are going to be back. And so we're planning for them. So whatever you choose to do, you have to stay with it. And it goes to, if I choose to be 5 days a week and I wake up and I don't feel like going to school today, you know, it's going to be like it used to be. You know, unless you're really, really sick, you need to be there. You need to be there. You're not going to be able to turn on your computer and join class that way. Okay, so if you choose 5 days a week, we expect you 5 days a week because that's how attendance is going to be in Infinite Campus, and we got to keep accurate attendance. So if you're going to be 5 days a week, you better make sure you can do it the rest of the year. If not, then go hybrid or go fully remote. But we're not going to have movement in between. There's no way we can do it. Pretty much every seat in every class, every period is going to be spoken for. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important that parents and kids hear that. So parents need to have that conversation with their student, for sure. And that's what I have. Any questions on any part of the? Yeah.
I have some questions. So
Yeah.
I understand how we can keep desks 3 feet apart and how we can control the cafeteria being 3 feet apart or where kids are eating. But what is the plan to ensure that kids are 3 feet apart in the hallways or in the bathrooms?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have folks that are monitoring that? What is the plan?
So
for that?
a lot of reminders to kids. You know, we're not, and it is an issue because we're not going to have, my expectation of teachers isn't going to be in the hallway because now they're cleaning, instead of cleaning 8 to 10 desks, they're cleaning 20. So it's going to take more time,
Yeah.
obviously. and they're not in the hallway now. You know, so it's administrators and others are gonna have to be in the hallways, and really just reminding them as they walk by, you know, everybody's gonna stay on the right, on each side, whatever way you're going, and just stay 3 feet apart. The lunches are still 6 feet apart because they have their masks
Right,
off.
right.
Yeah, and that's where the desks will come in. And the, you know, the cafeteria, AP room, and half the gym, because it is still 6 feet, it's not 3 feet. But every place else will be 3 feet. Yeah, so really just reminders more than anything. Yeah.
I imagine those reminders have to happen daily now.
They do.
Anyway, I mean, we're talking, I know it's with the little kids, but high schoolers,
Yeah.
you know, I know it's hard. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I would anticipate that. And I appreciate your comment about needing to stick with your plan,
Mhm.
because I think kids have become accustomed to that remote piece if need be.
Right.
And so they, you know, if they choose in person, they need to be in
Yep.
attendance, just like they would have been last year, and not fall back on something that was maybe convenient or.
Exactly. Yep.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to clarify, CDC guidelines state that once a staff member is vaccinated and past their 2 weeks, if they are exposed, they do not have to quarantine.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
We know.
The other thing that I think people need to really think about is, you know, Pfizer and Moderna, some of these vaccines are available to 16 and up and 18 and up. And there's been so much talk about what's going to happen with prom, what's going to happen with graduation, what's going to happen. Well, you know, I want those things to happen as much as anybody else, but I'm sure my seniors want them to happen the most. You know, people need to think about their responsibility in getting across that finish line. You know, maybe this vaccine is right for you, maybe it's not. But if it's not, well, maybe you need to take extra precautions. Maybe you need to not socialize as much as you have been. You're right. I think families need to take ownership in how this is going to affect them.
Yep.
You want your kid to go to prom, and you want your kid to go to graduation, and you want your kids' friends to do the same. So think about how to get across that finish line. Should be coming up here in April, in which those vaccines should be available to the 18 and up and the 16-year up even. So, you know, that might be a really, especially the ones who work in the community, it might be a really good way to go for a lot of people. And it's definitely an option. And once again, once those kids who choose to get vaccinated are vaccinated, if they get exposed, you know, they don't have to quarantine. They don't have, and that's a really big piece to keep in the back of your mind. That means you get to go to prom. That means you get to go to graduation.
Yeah, and going through this, that's my biggest nightmare is,
Right.
you know, it could be it could be a show choir, it could be
Right.
any competition, it could be
Right.
playoff games, it could be the prom, it could be graduation. You know, on the day before, we have 125 kids that are close contacts and
Right.
they can't participate. You know, we're really worried about that.
Yep, and it's a legitimate worry. But we can only control what we can control. Those families, they all have to make that decision for themselves to be part of the solution, be proactive, make sure that that happens for their kids.
Yeah,
But-
And it's part of a concern now, you know, whether we're bringing students back or not, sports are happening, you know, competitions will be happening. And so when we're considering going forward about prom or graduation or any of those big events for our seniors, you know, that's a consideration today or at the end of April. So
Right.
Yep.
either way, I understand it'll affect more kids, but I
yeah,
do appreciate the fact too that the quarantine piece may be less of an issue, especially on the staffing side, because look where we were
Yeah.
this week was lack of staffing.
you know,
So-
and then in ending and in general, you know, and Heidi and Tristan have called in and, you know, they can speak also, but I think it's really important to note that every staff member that I've talked to at the high school want the kids back.
Right.
We would love to have the kids back. But it really needs to be safe. Everybody needs to feel safe, and we need to do it the right way.
I think that community effort, like we talked about in the last meeting, is a crucial piece to that. Not only do we need some of the support from the community members for possible subbing and staffing and that kind of thing, but
Yep.
also on the same hand, keeping everybody vigilant and letting these kids see through to the end of the year would be
Yeah,
would be really great.
Yeah, and the teachers and the students need to know that the supports are there.
Absolutely.
You know, and
Absolutely.
kind of like the beginning of this year, things will happen that we don't think of, and
Yep.
you know, we'll make adjustments
Right.
and keep going. But you know, they really want the kids back, but they really want it in a safe way, and you know, that's really important it's important to all of us.
Yep,
It
absolutely.
really is.
Mr. Clifford, I have just one more clarifying question. So if a student chooses to do fully in person 5 days a week, and they do not come to school, but they Zoom in, or if they
Yeah.
if they don't show up in person in school and they do extracurricular activities, they will not be able to practice that day or participate that day if they don't show up in person?
Yeah, and we had that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be just like it was last year.
Yeah.
You know, if you're
Okay.
not there for a
Yeah.
full day of
Yes.
school, then you won't be able to participate.
Okay.
And if there could be extreme cases that will show up and we'll treat them,
Yep.
you know, as individual situations that we'll work through. But now yeah, so if you choose to be in person, you're there in person every day.
Yes.
That makes it really easy.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple questions as well. So with the plan for the high school, would all of the high school be coming back at the same time?
Yeah,
Or
that's
would
what
it
we'd
be
like to
staggered?
do.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, and this could really go for any of the educators or administrators. Can someone explain to me why we would need to keep hybrid if we were offering 5-day in person and the fully remote, like, because it's no longer keeping it in a cohort. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering what the benefit would be. for
Some kids have really done well with a hybrid, and now they prefer it, you know, and I didn't really want to take that away from them. I didn't want them to make that decision, you know, do I just go a hybrid, or do I go full remote or 5 days a week? And, you know, whatever it is, 59 kids, you know, chose hybrid for a reason. And some don't feel completely safe, you know, that's part of it. And like I said, others, they like going 2 or 3 days a week and then being home 2 or 3 days a week, and they've done well, and it's worked for them. So, yeah, we just didn't want to take that from them.
And then the other, and this is really not even of utmost importance, because obviously children's safety is the most important part, but is there going to be protection for the gym floor? Or is it potentially going to be damaging and something that would have to be repaired and replaced later down the road?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. We haven't even gotten that far right now. We do have the metal
Finding
chairs.
space right now.
Yeah, we had the metal chairs, you know, and they have rubber on the bottom of the chairs. I don't know what the trays will have on the bottom of them, you know, we'll see, but, you know, we could put something down, a tarp or something, to help save the gym floor, yeah.
Like I said, that's like the least important, it's having the space, but.
Well, we just did the floor, so last year,
All right.
so it kind of is important,
Right.
yeah.
And then as far as a mental health counselor, just something to keep in mind, maybe considering a partnership with one of the local mental health organizations.
Sure.
At least we could, I know there's some schools in Hancock County that use, you know, some of like AMHC, I used to work at AMHC. So there's, like Deerell Stonington has someone from AMHC on one day out of the week.
Yep.
Just something to consider when we're trying to get someone and trying to get in and get kids back. If we can't get someone hired by then.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah,
potential.
absolutely.
So, about the floors in the gym,
Yeah,
tennis balls. Tennis
yeah,
balls on the bottom.
yeah. Underneath, we could do that.
That does it. Also, I just think as we're talking about these plans to everybody needs to realize we're making these plans. We want to have a plan in place, but the situation itself is fluid. We don't know we're hoping to bring people back in the end of April, although we don't know what the COVID situation is going to be at the end of April. We hope it's better than it is now. All the science kind of says, as we get these people vaccinated, it should be better. You know, we think it's going to be better than it. However, if for some ungodly reason it were to be terrible at that point, we would make an assessment at that time. But I've had a lot of emails this week questioning that, so I just feel like we need to put that there into the ether to let people know. We are making these plans. Our idea is to move forward with these plans. However, every single day is different. Every single day sometimes needs reassessment. But well done on your planning now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
I have a couple.
Well. See,
Paul's like, hey.
I was watching.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying the reason for allowing hybrid students choose to remain doing that. I'm just curious what it's like for a hybrid student on the remote days. Are the classes synchronous?
Yeah.
Fully?
Yep,
So-
fully synchronous.
Okay, and
Yep.
that's working well?
Yep,
Okay.
it has.
And then I appreciate you're saying that the staff is full, pretty much fully supportive of returning to school. We have, the board's received a couple of messages from a couple of staff members that were forwarded to us who have some reservations about it, mainly because of, it appears that there's potential for rising community spread here.
Mhm.
And I think Abby may have addressed, part of that answer to that question as well. If that happens, obviously, we may have to pivot and do something
Sure.
different from what we're planning here.
Yeah.
But both the staff messages that we received were from people who said, yeah, we really want kids back.
Right.
That's the most important.
Yeah, and the comment of, bringing them back a safe way and
Yeah.
is general, but it covers a lot of areas that
Yeah.
teachers have concerns about.
Yeah, but I'd just like to acknowledge that, first of all, thank the teachers for doing what they're doing, acknowledge that, and appreciate them for wanting to make this work, but also acknowledge that there are concerns out there. And
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and teachers' health and safety is paramount along with other things. And then one other little thing, you talked about transportation and asking parents who can drive their kids to do so and students who can drive to do so. I just want to add, if you can also walk to school or ride your bicycle, that would be great
It's
also.
gonna be beautiful.
Especially
Yes.
since it's spring.
There's, the weather's getting better, the city's Public Works Department has been out there in full force, street sweeping the roads and getting the sand and gravel off them, which makes it safer to drive a bicycle. And the walking path that goes right by the high school is a great way to get there, so.
And we do have bike racks.
Yeah, and have you had
There's
any?
only usually one a fall and one a spring that it's used, but
Do you have any,
you could tie up more bikes to them.
have you had
That's
any
right.
kids bicycling there recently? As far as you know?
No,
Probably not yet.
no, we really
I think
haven't.
Erica told me there's one kid has biked to the middle school, at least
Yeah.
one.
It's a good way to clear your mind before and after.
It is,
school.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen any this spring yet.
All right, well,
No.
just remind them that
Yeah, yep,
that's a good option.
yeah,
All right, thank you.
good, thank you.
Thank you.
Sam?
Who drew the next straw? Erica.
Okay, full disclosure, we really didn't draw straws.
Kind of hard to do via Zoom.
Good evening. Just to start off, I appreciate everyone who served on the committee for return school plans. We had a really productive meeting last week, and some of these plans were born, and I've gone back to my staff, and we've been continuing the work since then. But just to share with the public, we had 241 surveys returned total from our surveys, and 84% of those families want to return 5 days per week. We also had 131 students out of the surveys that would need some sort of transportation, whether it be in the morning, in the afternoon, or both. So with the results that we took into account and the work that I've done with staff, for our return to school plan, we are trying to do a phase-in plan with one grade level returning at a time and offering a 5-day per week or a fully remote option, and eliminating the hybrid option. We are planning on having 8th grade return first. They have the lowest number of students, and we know that we can safely, pending the 3 feet approval, get them all in safely with those guidelines and following the CDC guidelines. And then subsequent grade levels will follow. Currently, right now, based on conversations and planning that I've done with 8th grade, they are prepared and ready to have students return on April 12th, the week before vacation. And then the subsequent grade that would return would be 6th grade, because they are the next grade level that can safely fit all of those kids back in with the guidelines, following the guidelines, and that would happen after April break, tentatively. And again, some of these dates are fluid, depending on approval tonight, and I know there are other contingencies with the MOU with the teachers union and things like that. So, but those are the things that I've been working on with the grade level teams. Fifth grade is a little bit more of a spacing issue in some regard, and seventh grade is definitely a spacing issue. We have a lot more kids in seventh grade than we have teachers. So not only might we need to find a space, an alternative space for kids, but also some sort of teacher, maybe me. So we'll see what happens in that regard. We're still working on those plans, but when we use the phase-in approach, it helps us to see where the alternate spaces are in the building that we can fit kids in safely. And we do want to eliminate the hybrid option. We just felt like 3 options is way too much for teachers to manage. The majority of staff understand, though they may not like it, that to eliminate fully remote altogether is really hard on families right now, given where we are. And the surveys indicate that there are people that still really want that fully remote option. My hope is that in doing this, that we can prepare families and kids to come back for the fall fully in person, and to work with families to do that. So while the teachers don't love the fully remote, the majority of teachers in the middle school are teaching synchronously and feel that they can manage that option with the 5-day in person, but can't manage all 3. Students may be utilizing some lockers with the 3 feet spacing in certain classrooms. They may need to use the lockers, so teachers will be sanitizing lockers and desks and things like that. We're going to utilize the cafeteria, part of the cafeteria for lunches, as well as one 8th grade math class that's a little bit larger, given the way that we split math. We're going to be staggering transition times in the hallway so that we can keep the spacing. And much like Mr. Clifford said, it's really going to be one of those things where once you make your choice, we really need you to stick with it for the rest of the school year, because it is going to be tight spacing, and to be fluid like we have been is not really going to be effective and be able to happen given the restrictions in the classrooms. Some considerations that we're still working on are staffing. We've been really transparent about that's an issue, trying to cover lunches and recesses so that teachers get their 20-minute lunch, making sure that we have coverage for our special ed students, things like that. Limited movement by adults throughout the classroom, given the fact that they still have to remain 6 feet from kids. It's going to be kind of, especially for middle school, like we're starting from day one with building new routines and procedures with all of the kids back. So that will take some time to do. And it'll also, I think, teachers and I are also concerned with the fact that middle school kids have been used to having 2 to 3 days at home for school, and to get them back in the 5-day-a-week schedule is going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit of routine to get them there. And we want to make sure that, kids don't wake up and, I don't feel like getting up in the morning, I'm not coming to school. Like, you need to be there, just like Mr. Clifford said. You need to be there. If you're a 5-day-a-week kid, you're a 5-day-a-week kid. We've got to get them back in that routine and that structure so that we're prepared for the fall and we can hit the ground running. Yes. Teachers, the majority of teachers that are choosing to be vaccinated will be vaccinated after April break. And they're going to need time for, additional time for sanitizing, because there's more desks and tables to sanitize with more kids, certainly. And then just ordering a few extra supplies and things like that. That we need, given that some tables still can't be used in classrooms and it's still going to need to be desks. We may need to order a few extra. We're still kind of working that out depending on the spacing. And pending approval tonight and where we go, I have letters ready for families to send out so that they can contact us. Most of the survey results are in. There are a few people that didn't fill out the survey. But they can contact me if they want to stay fully remote. Otherwise, we're planning on them being 5-day-a-week in person. And both 8th grade and 6th grade, I met with them today. They're ready to move forward and do that planning and set up their classrooms as soon as we have the approval to do so. My hope is that with a phase-in plan, we can phase a new grade level in each week. So if we start on the 12th, we're phasing in the 6th grade the week that we come back from break. And then the next grade will be 5th most likely, and then 7th as soon as we can figure out the spacing and the staffing. And hopefully we still have quite a bit of time left in the school year to get everybody in and have everybody return. So they have a good chunk of time, 5 days a week. Any questions? Yes.
So let's pretend in a perfect world that spacing was not an issue. Do you have a ballpark of how many employees you would need to have hired between then and now?
Yep, about 3.
And one of
does that
them would be
include a
for
7th grade?
No, actually, sorry,
That's you
4.
in that position?
Yeah, that's 4. So that includes
Okay,
our
just
special
checking.
ed vacancy, special ed teacher
Yep.
vacancy, a few ed techs, because when you go back, right now, because we're in cohort groups, we can split ed techs to cover students on the opposite days, because that's how they're spread out and that's how we've scheduled it. But when you put them back together 5 days a week, there's a little bit more coverage that's needed. So we're short a couple of ed techs, and then with the 7th grade spacing issue, that's an additional adult that we need supervision.
Did you
and-
say possibly 5th grade as well? Or
I'm sorry,
Did
what?
you say possibly 5th grade would need another teacher?
No, I don't believe so. I just think the spacing is I think
The
we're
spacing.
close, and depending on if there are students who stay fully remote, then that will be the determining factor. In 7th grade as well, we do have a few kids, but there's less 7th graders who are already fully remote. And I don't anticipate those students that are in 7th grade that are fully remote changing to 5 days per week. So even with those fully remote students, we still have a pretty significant spacing issue with only 4 teachers. The other grade levels, besides 8th, who doesn't need a 5th teacher, they only have 4 teachers.
Now, you mentioned, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned the lunch plan was going to be using the cafeteria and
Yep.
an 8th grade math class?
An 8th grade math class will need to use the cafeteria in the morning.
Okay.
Just because there's more
Okay.
kids in the spacing issue. So that's one class first thing in the morning. We looked at, we think we can fit 20 students into the cafeteria on one side and still keep the traffic flow going for other students who need to pick up lunch. We're looking at utilizing outdoor spaces for that as well. And we also we can put the curtain down in the gymnasium if we have to. I'm also working with Ms. Johns to make the computer lab a viable space. So we're really working on moving some things around in the building. There's still
Kids everywhere.
yeah, there's still planning going on. And with kids everywhere, it also means adult supervision everywhere. And so we're working that out as well. So there's still some pieces to the puzzle that haven't quite fit in yet, and some considerations, but we're still working on it. And I'm confident that we'll get it done by the time we have kids in. But as the phase-in plan for us, that's why that works so well, because then we can see where we have left for spaces. And as we phase them in, that'll allow us to see what we have for staff too and where we can cover things.
And work out some of the kinks.
Yeah. And in a week's time, we can work out a lot of kinks to be able to continue to get more kids in.
So the cleaning of lockers, Beth had brought this up, I think, at our other meeting, and we were talking about lockers are assigned, is that correct?
Yes.
So the same student is touching it all day, essentially?
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
So is there a need to clean it were you talking about in between classes?
No.
Okay,
At
just
the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Some grade levels have talked to me about, like, they don't feel that they need to use it because they have enough space in the classroom,
Sure.
and it just will cut down on some of that transition time. Other grade levels are like, we really would need to use it because there won't be enough space. And so what we talked about at 8th grade is that the teachers were willing to say to the kids, you can store your stuff in there for the day, you take it out every afternoon, we'll spray everything down at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, okay.
And
I
they
just wanted
stagger when the kids go, they stagger, so they're 3 feet apart at least in the hallway. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now. They may decide that it's taking too much instruction time out of them going to the lockers, and having to do that to stagger them, because when you're talking about staggering, 87 kids versus 35 kids, it's a little bit different. So I think it's a trial and error type of thing with that.
So The next thing I was going to mention, and this is going to be kind of in a general sense, because it doesn't just apply to your school, is that we need to discuss as a board as well the need for volunteers. And so we need to be able to have those volunteers back in our school as well. Because I anticipate, especially at these younger levels where they need that adult right there, to be able to cover a lunch, room or something along those lines. And it definitely appears to be a time where, we need our volunteer, everybody, coaches, everything, because our school system has relied on that for so long, and if we're lacking in any of those areas, we really need to be able to bring those people back in.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that. I think too, like some of the best case scenarios are retired teachers.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah,
Well,
that may be vaccinated already.
Yeah, yep.
And maybe this will help with the board's discussion, but some of the conversation we had this morning was, one of the parents on the committee, Jen Baraletti, had mentioned, she could sub, but she couldn't sub every day, all day.
Right.
But she might be able to have time. So
Right.
one thing we talked about was if there are people who are willing to put in an application to sub, even if they could only sub for part of a day, one of the places that's been identified that would be helpful is, and April will talk about this when she comes up. So April, I'm sorry to steal your thunder.
She's over there.
Over here. The customer's sitting over there. Is taking meals from the kitchen to the classrooms. So that would be a great opportunity for a volunteer. But if somebody could sub in that period of the day, a couple of things.
Right.
One, that would help us address that need, but two, somebody could get paid for it. That's one
Yeah.
piece. The other piece we talked about with volunteers is, and I'll give credit to April, was, we haven't had volunteer applications this year.
Right.
If you started to collect them now, it would be a time warp, if you will. But one of the things we talked about was going back to last year's list, and taking a look, because there are certain things, if you look at what can we have a volunteer or a substitute do, you've got to match up skill sets, abilities, and interests with the needs.
Right.
Could look at where are the needs, who are the appropriate volunteers who could do that, and have the principals reach out to those people. The background check is simple. We can run that. It's a very quick process. So just for the board's, we talked a little bit about that, and April will say it. I'm not going to lie to you. We could use the help.
Yes, absolutely.
So I have a question about, so 8th grade is coming back soon, but those staff members are not going to have their second vaccine yet, or most of them will not, correct?
We probably can't give out.
Yeah, I really, I
Kinda hard to
can't.
pin- that's a pinpointed.
They're not in the realm of the rest of, we're thinking everybody, the majority will be fully vaccinated and gone through the time period by end of April. Now we're talking about bringing some people back before that. I would think that I think to make that work, I think we have to give those staff members the option. I think we have to make sure that it's okay with those staff members that they are put in that position.
I did.
Okay.
I have.
So these
I've
discussions
had
have been had.
several conversations with 8th grade. We've started these conversations weeks ago, and I talked with them again today. They are on board with that plan, per approval, per some other contingencies with MOU, things like that.
I think that's the important piece, honestly.
Yep.
For us, is there are contingencies with that MOU.
Mhm.
And we do have to consider that when we go and set these dates. If that's not the case, then Erica, and they cannot start, does that just set your plan, to start 8th grade the week after, and you'll still continue? Or would you be able to
Yeah.
bring a couple grades back at a time?
We may be able to bring both 8th and 6th back, but I really would like to bring 8th back first and do
To
it the
pilot it.
week before vacation. Because, number one, the teachers are on board with that plan. They are ready for that. We have been working on that for weeks. And, I think that would just give us a better idea of what we can expect in other grade levels, and plan accordingly. It'll just help us. But we may, if we have to push it back, we could. I just would like to get the 8th graders back before vacation if possible, even if it's for a couple of days, because I think that'll set the wheels in motion for them to get into a routine. And I think
So that's an interesting piece, like you said, a couple days, because that might be consistent with the MOU agreement.
Yep.
So the MOU agreement, can I say what that is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sure.
It was approved publicly.
Yes, has in notice of 10 school days.
Mhm.
And then, excuse me, the potential of a professional development day in there so that the teachers can prep. If we're looking at a date that might allow those students to come back on the 12th, that's not enough time, school calendar days.
Mhm.
So, but maybe the 14th and 15th could be, if we could arrange that. So then the 16th could be that PD day.
And that was something that we talked a little bit about earlier today. You know, the other piece would be, and this would be a conversation with the MOU, the group that worked on that with us. You know, is there an option if there are people who were willing to come back?
Willing to.
You know, that may open the doors up to let that happen again. Whether that's the
Right.
case or not, I don't know.
Right.
But that was certainly a consideration, and I think if you looked
Right.
at just say that the board votes tonight to approve whatever plan,
Mhm.
the notice goes out tomorrow. I think you were talking maybe the 14th or the 15th
Mhm.
would be the.
Those 2 days.
Yeah.
So then you're really just looking at a day ahead of that MOU agreement then.
Two.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Clifford counted out the school days
I
today.
think the 13th would be the 10th day.
Yep.
Is what we counted, so we could start them, but, you know, the question that we had was if it's agreeable.
Right.
And the teachers are agreeable to that, can we bring them back on the 12th?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so
Just to kind of talk about vaccines again real quickly, and
Sure.
Casey Kelly can tell me, Kelly Casey can tell me if I'm correct on this, but even after the first vaccine, you haven't gotten your second, you're between 50 and 60%
That is
protected,
correct.
correct?
That
Right.
is correct.
Right, so if it gives anybody peace of mind to know that,
Mhm.
if you've got Pfizer and Moderna, even 2 weeks after that first vaccine, you are 50 to 60% effective, which is almost just as much as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine
Yeah,
altogether,
Janssen,
correct?
yeah, that is correct, yeah.
Right.
Janssen is like 74, I mean, my husband would have the.
Right.
exact statistic, but it's in the 70s, that is correct.
But it is a pretty high, you know, it's better than a flu vac, a regular flu vac, basically. I mean, it is a pretty good amount of coverage. So teachers, you know, can take that information and do what they want with it, but.
I will say publicly, and I feel perfectly fine saying this tonight because I had this conversation earlier with the 8th grade teachers. They are on board to start on the 12th. And work through whatever we need to work through for the MOU contingencies. But they are ready to go and get kids back in.
I think it's great for your school especially because it does give you a chance to pilot it.
Mhm.
And then you have break.
And
then-
that's the group that's getting ready to go to high school next year.
Yeah, and for them to come back first
Yes.
is.
And they've really been
essential.
begging to be together.
Yeah.
And
I don't blame
in
them.
talking with our end of the year festivities, they really are thinking about how can we all be together as a group. And so the sooner that we can do that for them, the better off we'll be to give them that experience. Because if you think about these 8th grade students, and it's not just 8th grade, we want all our kids back.
Absolutely.
But these 8th graders, you know, since last March, they've lost a chunk of that, right? And then this is their last year in middle school, and these are kids who have been in the school since kindergarten, in this same school. And they're feeling a little bit nervous, and there's trepidation about going to the high school. But they've lost a chunk of their middle school time. You know, by this time, like, most of them have 8th grade-itis, and they're ready to, like, get out of it. See you later, Miss G. But it's not the case this
Right.
year. They
They
come
want to
in.
reunite and.
Yeah.
They come in and they want to be there and they want to be together. And, you know, those are the conversations I'm having with students. And they're nervous about going to the high school because I think they lost a little bit of their middle school pieces, traditional middle school pieces that they normally have in the past year.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think it's important to get them back first.
I do have, it's a community
Sure.
question, but it may be for both of you perhaps to answer. It's from Michelle Cody, and she says, I'm wondering about something that was brought up at our last meeting. How is it working with families with children in different schools with different schedules? Example, high schooler going back full-time, and then 5th grade still in remote or hybrid, since that high schooler may be home with the younger child while the parents are working.
Yep, I mean, it's something that we've talked about and certainly taken into consideration. I don't have a good answer.
Now,
It's hard.
Mr. Clifford, would that be
Yeah.
maybe an exception to that rule
Yeah.
of once you pick your schedule, you say in your schedule?
Yeah, and we have this at our house. So,
There you go. There's
so
one
if a
example.
student has to be hybrid for a couple weeks, or maybe the first week, just to watch a younger sibling, then and they want to come back 5 days a week, then we would make that exception.
Because you'd be planning for that in advance of that anyway.
Yeah.
It would just be like, hey,
I think that's,
Exactly.
I mean, the data's there, so
Yeah.
you're gonna know those families ahead of time, which is
Right.
interesting.
Right.
There. Mr. Clifford had a better answer than me.
That's why I said it might be a community
Yeah,
answer.
it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
Erica?
Yes.
So you mentioned that most of the classrooms at the middle school are synchronous,
Mhm.
but that led me to infer that some are not.
There are a couple that are not.
Okay, are
That
they
are,
going to be?
that are meeting with remotes separately,
Uh-huh.
the
So-
remote students separately.
So are those going to continue to meet separately, or are they going to
Yeah,
become
I
synchronous?
think that's something, we've been working all year towards getting everybody synchronous. And it's working really well in some areas and not so well in others. Science is really hard to be synchronous because of
Mhm.
labs and things like that, but it's working in some grade levels. And I think we continue to work with those teachers.
Mhm.
Some teachers just have a really good system where they have their remotes on certain times during the day and they're giving those lessons and it works better for them. So they would continue with that. But it's something that's part of the plan as we move forward, to continue to make sure that there is some synchronous learning going on if we continue to have the fully remotes. Based on the survey results, it doesn't look like we'll have that many
You
fully
don't.
remotes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed that, and yours is the second highest for wanting to return to full in time in person.
Yeah,
And then April's is the high, so I
Yeah.
was noticing that, you
Yeah.
really don't have a lot that are interested in staying fully remote, and I think that would help, across the board, those teachers who are,
yep,
and maybe with another few weeks, and knowing that those students are gonna be back in person, it might be an encouragement to get those students synchronous,
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that extra time isn't being
Yep.
spent, trying to teach both.
yep. I think the teachers who have been able to be successful with synchronous are finding it more beneficial with the fully remote. Like, it's just a little bit easier to manage. The hardest part about that, I think, is the grading. Like grading everything online, not having that in-person interaction with
Yeah.
kids. That's time consuming. Having fully remotes is time consuming. It's not been easy for teachers. It's not been great for kids. I mean, our fully remote kids, we have a few that are thriving, but those are the majority of families that I'm calling. Hey, we haven't seen you. Is everything okay? Like,
Well, I think that's the difficult part, is this comes to the consistency piece
Mhm.
of that education. So the synchronous learning, if it's going along, and we talked about this from September,
Yep.
it really, if there isn't a dedicated remote teacher, then that piece of logging in and watching that class going is where that best education is going to happen, because you're seeing it in full.
yep. I had
And
a.
so-
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay. I just really think there's some teachers who have really done that very well,
Mhm.
and it's nice to see. I mean, I've heard it in a couple of meetings, so the mentoring and
Yep.
that it really can work
Mhm.
successfully,
Yep.
and appears to be less time consuming. The
Yep.
grading piece I understand, but
Yeah,
but
I mean,
the
there's
actual
there's
teaching.
extra things that go along with that fully remote piece. I had a sixth grade teacher say to me today when I was meeting with them that, the kids who are in the hybrid system, who are logging in on their remote days synchronously, are used to, like, okay, math class is at 8 a.m., they're logged in. It's the kids who have been fully remote for the majority of the year that are still not logging when they should be, that are still, missing work, that are still, like, the kids who have not been in school at all and have no in-person, those are the ones that are really struggling. And so to get those kids back in would be a huge win for us.
Well, they're lacking schedule and they're lacking
Yep,
routine
structure.
and structure, and I think that's
And contact.
the advocacy for all of this is that's a big piece of it.
Yep.
Is the structure and the routine, because that's what students will thrive on. Whether
But we do have those students too, in both 6th and 8th grade, who have been fully remote the whole year and are doing beautifully.
Yeah.
And to rip that option out from under them, I don't think we can do that at this point.
Yeah, well, and just like Dan mentioned, when you have students who are thriving in those situations, if you are able to offer them, then that's a huge benefit. I mean, we are here with the same goal,
Yep.
to provide that education. And if it's working, then that, and there's a way to work around it, then
Right.
that's great.
Right. And I think at this point, those kids that are doing well with that have a good routine down. So,
They
and the
must,
teachers,
right,
the teachers
right.
have a good routine with them, so it's
Right.
not gonna be, that big of a hardship, I don't think.
And parental support is a big piece of that
Mhm.
too. If you're able to have that situation where those students, have somebody there and they're really encouraging
Yep.
and engaging them in their
Yep.
work, that's going to make a difference too.
For sure, yeah.
Erica, are kids all going to eat in their classrooms? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to work on staggering and flipping lunches in recess. So, half the kids may be eating lunch, half the kids might be out at recess. We're gonna use some of the cafeteria, we're gonna use different spaces. We don't have all the minute details worked out yet,
Yeah.
because we're still working on the schedule, and we have to see where the traffic flow comes from elementary because we overlap lunches and sometimes. So we just need to make sure that we are keeping our numbers where they need to be. But it's gonna be doing some of that flip-flopping, and, my hope is that the weather stays really nice and we can have kids eat outside and, have all of those things happen and make it like a picnic and
Yeah.
a field trip outside for lunch every day.
Make it
Like
fun.
whatever, we'll
Right,
make
right.
it fun,
Right.
My
But,
goodness, I would have loved that.
yeah.
Outdoor dining in its
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mr. Higgins, are we ordering tents or what? Are we planning on doing
We've got the
anything
tents
like
that we have in
that?
place right now. We have not ordered any more. We haven't had that need come up in discussion yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
we
if
do have
need
tents
be,
up.
it's a possibility.
Yeah, and we
Yep.
do have tents up and they are, people do utilize them. It's still a little muddy and wet.
Yeah.
So we haven't gotten quite that
Yes.
far yet, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, things will dry up a little bit and. we'll be able to
After
use
tonight's rainstorm.
Right?
Right.
After they float away a little bit.
Right.
At least it's rain.
Yeah.
And that will help too, that if it's a few weeks
Mhm.
too. I mean,
Yep.
that time frame's all gonna
Yep.
hopefully come together nicely and
Yep.
Yes, and it would be
weather-wise.
good to have it, it's almost like you start the 8th grade and then you have vacation, so it's like, okay,
Right.
it worked or it didn't, but now we can take a deep breath.
Right.
For a few days, hopefully.
Regroup.
Yep.
Not like any of our teachers are taking vacation most of the time anyway, but at least maybe a breath.
All right. Any other questions for Erica? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to kind of hit on things that are different. So Miss G and I are on the same page with offering fully remote or 5 days a week in person. That was really teacher-driven, and that conversation, as well as the survey data, supports that. There weren't a lot of families that wanted the hybrid. We had tons wanted 5 days a week back. So, and similar to what Mr. Clifford said, once you make your choice, you have to stay for the year just because we don't have the capacity. So after I had a conversation, so my order is a little bit different from the advisory committee if you were here that day. After following up with staff, similar to Erica, we wanted to bring back one grade level the week before vacation. That grade level would be grade 4. I had individual conversations and confirmations with each member of that team about their comfort level with regard to that, and they're ready to go. So that's something that we'd like to consider as well as you have your discussion tonight. In addition to that, I think an interesting point about grade 4 is I have a new student to place after the vote today, and then that grade level's capped. There is no additional room. So we are at capacity at that grade level in those classrooms at 3 feet. So any new student who comes in, they have to be fully remote.
be fully remote.
And I just want to make sure that that's clear. We are capped at that grade level.
Which grade level?
Grade 4. For me, after break, I'd like to start with grade 2 and possibly the life skills classroom. So grade 2 is ready to go, and the largest concern, one of the pieces from that, I think, is they're just ready to go. They're ready to go, but they need the week after break for additional time for vaccinations. After that, I don't really have a timeline set. My next grade that I would focus on would be kindergarten. And the ability to bring kindergarten back is dependent on staff hiring. So I want to be just clear, I didn't set a date for that because I can't target date when I'm going to be able to hire or get applications and those things. And after that would be grade 1 and grade 3 because of staffing as well. So grade 1 and grade 3 are our highest number of students. I have students to place right now that I can't place at 6 feet capacity until we make hopefully a vote tonight to do 3 feet. Then I can bring some kids in to start hybrid. But we are at capacity. We need an additional teacher at both grade levels to be able to do that. I have worked out space issues. We have some fully remote teachers that would just be teaching off-site, and we'd be able to utilize their classrooms. Communication has gone to them. We've had discussions about it. But I just want to be clear on that. I don't have firm timelines or dates set because I need to hire staff. So as an example, if I'm able to hire a long-term sub for grade 3 and we have the support staff, they might move to the top of the list based on, what I have or what I'm able to hire. Although my focus would be kindergarten, that's just because of the number of people I would have to hire, but I think that might shift as applications come in. I know you're going to ask me about approximately how many people I think I need. I think I need 10. So
Thanks for covering that.
two would be long-term subs. I need a long-term sub for grade 1. I need a long-term sub for grade 3. I still need a life skills teacher, and then I need additional ed techs. And I'm not considering maintenance staff or any of those things as well. So I'm not sure who's here to speak for Mr. Turnbull.
Can I ask a question while you're on
Sure.
staffing?
Yep.
That kindergarten staff, is that a teacher?
No.
Ed tech?
That's a support staff.
Support staff?
Several support staff members.
Okay, in that grade?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason, too, the other piece of as you're bringing back a grade levels, we still got to keep the other grade levels functioning at the hybrid level. So as I bring back, if I have support staff or teaching staff, they're focused on that grade level. They're not able to support other students as they had before. So I've got to manage bringing back people at capacity and still managing the hybrid piece with staff. So, some assignments might change and some of those things are going to change as we hire and do those things. One of the things I do want to bring up that really hasn't been brought up that we talked about today, the time issue, if that's okay? Okay. So one of the things that we talked about is kind of 2 approaches to providing teacher non-student days to be able to do what they need to do. One of the thoughts, we had 2 different discussions today. One was picking a district day like you had talked about.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest, in my scenario, that's not necessarily going to work. In Mr. Clifford's scenario where everyone's coming back at one time, that's fine, but if I give my teachers a day and there's no target days for their kids coming back yet and they don't know what kids are going to be in their home rooms or how are they going to plan for that effectively, I'm just not sure the day would be as much benefit to some teachers. I just want to be honest. And if it's supposed to be a student day for teachers to be able to plan, I want to be honest and consistent about that. And since I have 3 grade levels with no specific timeline, one of the things we thought about was, so if my suggestion was maybe if we have the week, so that would be the Friday before, that would be a non-student day for that specific grade level. I know that is not easy for the community, and I know it's not clean, when everyone has that day, but I want to also kind of consider the value of that day for teachers. And if we're going to have it, I don't know, I'll say the week before April break because everyone's trying to come back that week, it still makes it challenging because, if I'm a kindergarten teacher, I don't have a date. I can make it work for, grade 4, maybe grade 2, but when, my timeline down the plank, I'm not sure how effective it will be, and I just want to be honest about that, and that's something that I considered. And in addition, I'm going to speak up for Mr. Turnbull a little bit. If we have that day and you're trying to set up all those classrooms and all that maintenance pieces, and you've got the whole high school coming back, you've got all of 8th grade coming back, and then you got all of 4th grade coming back, that's really a lot to manage. So that's just, I just wanted to share that. I know that.
Can I just add into that? We did talk about that, and April advocated for Chuck and his staff you still have the vacation week, and not all of our custodians take time off on vacation week, but many do, and certainly with what's been taking place this year, some will.
Right.
But we also talked about the potential of, we may have some of our hourly staff who might be willing to do some work
That's-
over that week
yep,
to
yep,
help.
that's true.
So that's one possibility.
Yeah.
The only downside to that is some of our hourly staff may also be feeling overwhelmed and
Wanting to
tired.
have a vacation?
So there are some options, but I think
Right.
that's certainly a consideration.
Mhm.
I did want to bring that up because it was a discussion that we kind of had as a leadership team to meeting, and no one really kind of directly hit it
Yeah.
with regard to that, but I think it's an important thing to consider. And I do know that that is harder on the community if it's a specific grade level out versus a district-wide piece. But I felt it was important to share a different perspective. We are focusing on eating in classrooms, in classrooms or outdoor spaces, I'm going to say, as the weather permits. Every other desk, and then partnering up with a teacher as schedule allows. There'll have to be some stuff worked out, but have a partner teacher, one goes out, one stays in, and then they flip, one goes out, one stays in. So that's what we're looking at as we transition, specifically for grade 4. Grade 2 is a little bit more complicated. They don't all have lunch at the same time, but we're going to work on the coverage as we can, and that's an example of where we could use some support from
Yeah.
volunteers or substitutes. Yep.
Yep, that's good.
I think we need to talk about that a little bit more
Yeah, we will
when we,
before
when we
amend
do
that.
our vote. I think we might need to do a vote on the 3 feet, do a vote on volunteers, and kind of break down a few things. Because I think it's, you need some clarification, and we need, the fact is, we need every bit of support we can get.
Yeah, that's
That's
fair.
kind of the bottom line. I have one other question. So with your grades that we're needing staff.
Yep.
Is there a possibility of bringing back maybe half those grades at a time? I mean,
So,
like kindergarten, could you bring back 2 classes in kindergarten at some point, or is that just too messy?
it is messy.
It's okay. If it's too messy, it's too messy.
I'm thinking
really.
about the
It's
support.
okay.
I'm going in my head, so you got to give me a second.
Counting numbers in your head.
Yeah, I'm going through things in my head.
She's pairing people
So it is a
up.
little messy, and I can relook at that and maybe send an update. I'm fine to do that, but just the number of supports needed, we don't really have it at the
Yeah.
time, right now.
I do have a question. So you have quite a low number that want to stay fully remote.
Yep,
Is there any grade?
that responded to the survey.
Yes.
I just want to be clear about that, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Because there's whole grade levels that didn't respond for fully remotes to the survey. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't think the data's really
That
accurate. That's why I was
response-
like, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, let's just forget I just said that.
Yeah.
Do you have any grades that their numbers don't have any fully remote? Does any grade want to come back fully, and so you don't need that fully remote teacher?
Not that I am aware of.
So some in
Yeah.
every grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that there are some lower numbers that we have talked to help support some higher numbers by doing some literacy instruction, some reading groups, some breakout rooms, to having them kind of team based on, like I'm going to use an example, grade 4 has a really high number of remote kids. They're at 17, and I think they're going to go up a couple. And I think that having my 3rd grade teacher who has lower numbers can help support them with that. We're going to look at that with the remote teachers. We have a check-in every Friday, so that's something that we'll start conversations on. But we have to utilize them in those ways. And I'm not sure, I've not had any communication from remote teachers about coming back on site either. So.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
April, I have a question. So the long-term subs for 1st and 3rd grade, is that because those teachers have become remote teachers, or is it just because we were short teachers to start the school year with?
It's because we have remote teachers, so that's part of it. The second part of it is grade 1 is a monstrous class.
Yeah.
Teachers right now are at 23 kids and
Wow.
22 kids in 1st grade. So with the remote teachers teaching remotely, I need to be able to have a new teacher come in and
Yeah.
look at having some students, and parents have to be willing to have some students transition a homeroom teacher so we can come out 5 days a week. And that's the same for grade 3 as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I remember we had one of our teachers, a third grade teacher, go to airline, and she was teaching multiple grades at once. What about combining a full remote teacher to teach maybe kindergarten and first, another one to do second and third?
I think it'll depend on numbers. And even
yeah.
if, and that's a hard question, Abby,
I know.
because I'm not sure
Yeah.
the ability to come back on site and work. So that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just saying maybe a possibility to put out there to look into
Yeah.
to possibly,
Yeah.
you know, because we had this person in our school and she was capable of this at one time. Maybe we have other talents there as well now
Mhm.
that, you know, could also do the same. Because I know so many of our teachers have also taught so many different grades and
Yeah.
whatnot. That,
Yeah. Our teachers are amazing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they are.
So April, are you and all the other principals on the phone calling parents that didn't respond to the survey? And I know that it's
I'm going to be honest,
challenging and-
I did not call parents that didn't respond to the survey. What I did
Yeah.
is I focused on talking to parents who were hybrid and chose to go fully remote.
Yep.
That way, and then having conversations with fully remote teachers, checking in with their parents as they're doing parent-teacher conferences over the
Gotcha.
past several Fridays for K-4. So they're doing that check-in for me as well. But I did not call everyone that responded to the survey. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, great,
I focused on change.
Yeah.
Different answers from what I expected versus just calling people who didn't respond.
yeah.
I'm assuming that if they didn't respond and they're hybrid, they want to be 5 days a week, and if they didn't respond and they're remote, that they want to stay remote.
Yep.
So,
Any other questions for April? Beth, I'm going to take a break too. Do you have any questions that pertain to some of this so we don't
I
get
have
overloaded?
several.
Thank you, April.
Thanks,
Thank
April.
you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I have some things that are questions, some things that are comments. I'll hold on to the comments until, and do the questions first, and then we'll do the comments
Sure.
after. Does
Yep.
that sound like
I
a-
just figure it's a good time to just take a second because it could
Okay.
get overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, I'll just go in the order that I received them then. Let's just do it that way, and then I don't get confused
Okay.
as to which ones I've read, which ones I haven't. So this first one is, we all received this in our email, but she did ask that it was read out loud, and I know that some of us hadn't had a chance to read this. So this is from Jamie Reed, who is the librarian at EMS. First of all, thank you for taking the time to read my letter, and thank you, board members, for fighting so hard to do what's right for our kids. I'm writing this letter because I feel that someone needs to speak up for the many teachers, ed techs, bus drivers, and other staff members who, like many parents, want our students back in person 5 days a week. I feel that some teachers have had a voice with the backing of the union and the ability to express displeasure at the idea of everyone coming back. I feel that administrators have had a voice to express both their concerns as well as their rationale for wanting this to happen during their weekly 18 meetings and monthly board meetings. I feel the superintendent has had time to put a plan in place for bringing students back and all that this entails, but I don't feel as if my voice has yet been represented. I approach this issue as a dual perspective. First, I approach this as a parent of an EHS student who wants to see her son have some tiny bit of normal in his last few months of high school. This has been a very challenging year for so many reasons, and I'm sure I don't have to explain to you how life-altering this experience of staying home, hybrid learning, missed sports, missed friends, no prom, no senior activities, wondering if they will even have a graduation has been for these kids. I can speak for the circumstances in my own home and say that it has been a year filled with challenges, some of which were unavoidable, some of which have made no sense and seem to not be backed by science, some of which seem to be decisions made strictly out of fear, many of which do not put my son's needs and those of the vast majority of students on the forefront of people's minds. I'm extremely thankful for HCTC and Amy Bowles for seeing a need, setting the example early, and fighting to get our students back to some sort of normalcy months ago. If not for the 5 days a week at HCTC, I think this year could have been a much different experience for my family and for many others. Now I would like to talk to you a bit from my role as an ESD employee. This has been a long, hard year. We all feel it. Teachers went home last spring like everyone else, thinking that we would take 2 weeks off and then get back to normal. We all now know that normal wasn't in the cards. We have had to change on a dime and adapt the way we teach. Not easy for a profession filled with people who seem to be set in their ways. We had to learn how to rely on technology in ways we never had before, all while worrying about our students and their safety and balancing the needs of our own families. We did it the best way that we knew how. Decisions were made on our behalf, and we rolled with the punches and continue to do so. As a school employee, I understand that there are challenges when trying to bring students back. I understand that we are short-staffed and have unfilled positions from the beginning of the year. Is this an ideal situation? No, far from it. I understand that it will mean pushing aside personal fears and doing what we can to keep everyone safe. It means getting vaccines, continuing to wash our hands, clean spaces, and socially distance. It might mean bringing staff back to be in the building full-time who have thus far been able to work from home. It means we'll have to think outside the box to make this happen. If tomorrow the state of Maine changed the guidelines that we've been following for all of these months to say that there were no distance restrictions, then we would have to figure out how to make things work. We wouldn't get an option to say that kids can't come back. We are a public school. We are teachers and we have the ability to get creative and try to make things work. It is a time for that to happen. I ask that the board please pass a plan to do what is best for the students and bring them back to the school 5 days a week. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. And that was, again, from Jamie Reed, K-3 librarian. I do have I asked that one already. See, this is why I decided to go in order. This one is from Annie Atherton. She says, I don't understand. You're focusing on the teachers being vaccinated, but the children are not. And the teachers are still being allowed to be 6 feet away, but the children, unvaccinated children, are being packed in 3 feet away from each other. They can now not even take a break safely to drink water at their desks once we start doing this. We are not looking at their safety. I also don't think that the survey we were sent addressed this. It asked if we wanted our kids back in school full-time when it was safe. Of course we do. But this did not state that safe for our kids means vaccinated teachers. Vaccinated teachers changes nothing for the kids. Have in response to that from Annie, have we considered that, I mean, I'm sure we have, that the kids aren't being vaccinated yet?
No, they
So-
aren't. And I'm not even sure that by next fall, we would have any indication that children of a very young age would be under consideration for vaccination. So
Yeah.
I think what's interesting to that, and I'll comment on that piece, and then first off, thank you to Jamie. That was thank you for her, and Beth for reading that and getting that out to us. But I think that the interesting piece about this is we're going on guidelines that are currently in place with the CDC. We're not changing the guidelines that are currently in place for the CDC. When we have the 3-foot minimum and we want to bring students back, that's to the guideline that is currently in place.
That's just changing our own protocol.
That's just changing our own protocol. And we're going to go along the assumption that this isn't going to change. We're not changing masking, we're not changing hand washing, we're not changing symptom checking, we're not changing, those, those things that are in place because, and I would be, let me make sure I word this right. The risk at that age is extremely low. Not only is it extremely low for contracting the virus, but it's also extremely low for spreading the virus to our adults. And so we do have to keep that under consideration when we're going forward, and I think we all have. I don't think that's something, when we were talking about the 3-foot rule and we were advocating for the 3-foot rule, that's not out of with negligence. That's with thought and care and compassion.
The other thing that I would add, the federal CDC recently changed from 6 to 3. They were at 6 all along. The other piece that's happened over the past several months, and I know this is something the board has talked about, you've seen studies in other states that have been done that have shown as long as you maintain the proper mitigation effects, masking, washing, the 3-foot distance, ventilation, all of those pieces that our staff has done a great job of here. There's not been any discernible difference in a 6-foot or a 3-foot spacing. And there've been some data that the CDC in Maine has put out on that. I know that's information that, when this conversation first came back up about, does the board want to consider going to 3 feet? That's information you guys have considered.
Absolutely. I was just wondering about the drinking water aspect
That's
of
what I was
that. Are
gonna
they gonna be
ask.
able to drink water at their desks? Anybody?
April.
You're the furthest away.
She's gonna hop right up and answer that
We just
for us.
talked about it, like working it in snack and lunch, that they would do opposites or working it into like a workshop model. So right now, these kids, you know, in these certain spaces are working on this activity. These kids have a break, whether it's a water break or a snack break, but they would be separated. It would be every other student, and they would be 6 feet apart. So we talked about integrating it into what they're doing in the classroom already. So it didn't seem like, oh, you're having a snack, you know, kind of watching you. But that's what we kind of talked about, was doing that and integrating it into like a workshop model or centers in classrooms. So.
And I would assume that if a kid really needs a drink.
That's what I was
Just go
just
get a
saying.
drink.
An
Yeah.
exception could be made. You can go
Yeah.
stand
Yeah.
6 feet away and.
And kids are, and we're not going to, you know, kids don't always take drink breaks at the exact same time anyway, yeah.
Can I go back to the previous point just for a second with Mrs. Atherton? First, I want to thank her for sending her comment in, but I think it's critical that we remember, you know, and Abby, you said this before, we all play a responsibility to have a role in this. We need to make sure that we're all doing the things that we need to do. And sometimes people, I don't want someone to forget it, but we have the checklist you're supposed to look at every morning. If you have symptoms, keep your child home. You know, our staff and our students have done an incredible job focusing on the masking, reminding the spacing, all those pieces. If the board's going to vote to adopt and move to the 3-foot piece, it has to be with the understanding that those things are going to continue to happen. Because that's what those studies were based upon. So thank you for letting me get that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, also, this is the thing, the CDC guidelines changed for a reason. It wasn't arbitrary. When this outbreak started, those guidelines were put into place out of an abundance of caution, because we did not know at that time just how bad this was going to be or not be. The CDC guidelines were almost, but not quite, the same as what the transmission for Ebola would have been. That was what the CDC and the government, that's where the standards started. We are a year into this now. We now have science to back up what the CDC is saying, to say the transmission for the under 15 is so much less. The infection rate for the under 15 is so much less. That's why the federal government made these changes, and that's why we can follow them with peace of mind to say this is okay, because we are at a point in which so much harm is being done to the kids by not allowing them to have an education that, you know, that works for them. You know, we're doing the best we can, but there are so many kids that need to be in person for a variety of reasons. We need to have eyes on some of these kids. We need to have, they need access to certain, you know, type support that they can't get remotely. And the fact is, we're allowing that to happen because we now have the science to say this is okay. I didn't just look at the United States. I talked to people all over, my friends all over Europe, to see what are you guys doing? What is your kid doing? What is the transmission rate? What do they have to do in school? And even when you compare what we are asking to do right now, it is still extremely cautious as to the plans in England, in Spain, in Italy, where it was one of the worst parts of the outbreak. This is still way more cautious than those plans. So, you know, I think we're doing good, but we are still giving you, as the parents, the choice. If you're not comfortable, we understand that.
Right, there's a fully remote option.
Yeah, there's a fully remote option. And I say this coming from a parent who has a high-risk kid. If my daughter gets sick with this, she could lose a kidney like that. You know, we have issues, and I'm comfortable sending my child back to 5 days a week with these standards. If you're not, you're not, and I get that. But this was not some arbitrary, you know, not well thought through, you know, matter of board decisions here. We did think about that, and we did think about the kids' safety, and we still are. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been here.
Yeah, well, and you also add to that the social aspect of things. It's a lot easier for you and Jen to have a conversation being 3 feet apart than it would be for you and Paul being 6 feet apart.
Mhm.
You know, like there's definitely, you know,
Well,
we're not giving our kids 100% back their social life as far as school goes,
Right.
but we are making it a little bit easier in that 3 feet distance.
And I think also with that younger age group, that is very difficult because that at-home learning is a lot different because it's got to have that full, complete parent support, and that's not the same as, you know, our high schoolers who can independent learn and some of our middle schoolers. So having them back full-time in person to the capacity of 3 feet, which is under the CDC, the main guidelines that we didn't adopt when we put our hybrid plan in place, and we now are considering that, doesn't, you know,
Yeah,
it is there.
As science has come forward.
Yep, it is
yeah.
there, and it's supported. All right, anything
All
else?
right.
Beth?
I have one from Becky Faulkner.
Mhm.
First of all, I'm curious why a survey was not sent out to teachers and staff like it was sent to parents, so we could share our thoughts and concerns on returning to school 5 days a week. Secondly, if the middle school returns to full-time, all the grades that are not back full-time yet, will they be hybrid or fully remote until they return? For example, 8th will return first, so what will the 7th graders be doing? Thirdly, I feel like the mental and emotional health of students should really be taken into consideration. Asking students to wake up 5 days a week to enter the school building, which they may not have entered in close to a year, is asking a lot. Students with depression, anxiety, and/or OCD are going to really struggle. Students with depression who have not taken care of their physical appearance since they went fully remote are going to struggle as well. And for some of these students, a sleep schedule has not been routine during this time away from school.
So
So the
one of
first question
Yep.
is why the survey wasn't sent to teachers and staff to ask the same question about
So,
going back 5 days a week?
I think we can address that pretty easily with the committee that was put in place. The reentry committee that was put in place had representatives from each of the schools. It had the administration, it had EEA reps, it had parents, it had school board members, it had the superintendent. We had a very comprehensive committee. That committee was put in place for the reason of, or the hope that we all could collaborate with that information. This was something that the community really stressed was missing when we went and put in our hybrid plan and collaborated over that piece.
And
So-
I'm assuming, and I'm 99% certain that I'm assuming this correctly, that our administrators have been talking to their teachers. Like
To
they've all-
staff.
They've all said it in their
Right.
presentations tonight, that they've been
And
talking
I
to
think,
their teachers.
you know, if there were concerns, those representatives that were on that committee would certainly have brought any of those concerns forward to the committee. Second question, sorry.
And I think we've kind of sort of addressed this.
Yeah,
a little
I
bit
think so
already.
too. They would be in their normal
Yes,
routine.
it was, okay, so say 8th grade is back full-time, what's the 7th grade?
7th grade will stay in their hybrid until we bring everybody back. So until their return
So
date,
they'll stay in their current.
they'll stay in
mode.
their current, what they're currently doing until we're able to bring everybody back. And 7th grade is probably going to be the last group we bring back because of the spacing issues and the number of students. I had another new 7th grader register recently, so it's tight and we're going to make it work, but it's going to take us a little bit longer to figure it out than some of the other grade levels.
Now, students who have been on a fully remote, if they're hoping to come back
Mhm.
full-time,
Mhm.
could they start at the hybrid level right now
Yeah,
currently?
I could get them back in hybrid.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that would kind of ease them into some of these
Mhm.
mental health issues
Mhm.
that she's talking about,
Yep.
and getting them back
And
into it.
just to kind of address some of that too, like we've talked about that as a group. You heard Mr. Clifford talk about wanting to add additional mental health. We meet with our guidance team every week. Stacy and Brenda, April, Travis, and I, we all meet every week. We do reviews about what's going on. We're talking about social emotional learning. We're putting things in place to support students and teachers as well. We have our wellness room. I mean, that's been at the forefront of everything we've done all year long.
Right.
And we're hoping that, you know, with bringing some of these students back, we recognize that there probably will be some emotional issues, and getting them back in a structure and dealing with some of the anxiety that comes along with that will certainly be at the forefront of what we do on a daily basis. So it's not that we're not considering that. We talk about it every time we meet, and we meet weekly with our guidance team to discuss those issues.
Well, and I think it's very safe to say that in addition to the need for in-person learning,
the next largest part of what we're thinking about is
Absolutely.
the mental health of the children who
Absolutely.
haven't been in school
Absolutely.
for, what that impact has had not being in school.
Correct, yep.
I think it's also safe to say too, depending on how the vote would go this evening, is that is a considerable amount of time too. It's not, we're not putting this in place tomorrow.
Yeah.
And expecting students to be back tomorrow and.
Yeah, so you
and-
have time to work on a sleep routine. a sleep
Absolutely,
schedule, and a-
and it gives a lot of mental preparation for everybody involved, including our students and our families, to how they're gonna approach those situations, and if they feel like they need support, then they're able to reach out and get some of that. But I think, with the indication of the dates that we've been discussing here tonight in the plans, that's several weeks, a few
And-
weeks, so.
And I would encourage families to reach out. I mean,
Absolutely.
we have great supports in place, and we have some resources that we can guide parents to, and we've been doing that all year long. Even our fully remote students who have needed support have been able to reach out virtually to our counselors. So if that's a consideration or something that you're concerned about as a parent or guardian, don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we're here for.
Or even, I have a child who has anxiety, and before the school year started this year, he had a nice Zoom conversation with Miss Gabinelli, and he felt so much better after
Right.
that. So like
Right.
sometimes even just seeing that person's face
Absolutely.
and getting to ask them the questions that the child is really feeling, and them knowing that they can be heard to ask those questions. can
Yeah.
make a big difference.
And we do, I mean, all of us do that with students too. We meet with them, and we're willing to do that with families too. If they have questions about what it's going to look like when they come back, to ease any anxieties, I'm happy to do that at any time. And I know the other administrators are on the same page with that, so.
Thank you. Was that all of that and then one question?
That was, yeah, the rest of it was the mental health
Yeah,
aspect.
thank you.
Also pertaining to this survey, the climate survey has been, you two have been working on that for a very long time, and the COVID questions for the teachers are in there. It's just that survey had to get a different approval process, and that process took a while. We really kind of wanted, we didn't think that the process would be this long, quite frankly, but it is, and this is where we're at, and it's about to go out, and we do care about their voices, but we also sought their voices in several different ways, and yes, part of that is, there is a survey, and it's on its way.
Yeah.
It's just the time.
Yeah, and it's more encompassing than
That's-
the one
yeah.
that was 3 or 4
Yeah.
questions that was sent to
But
parents.
those COVID questions are coming in this. We will
So
see.
that was all for that one question.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is from Marlena Ford. It sounds like you're relying a lot on the information that was gleaned from the survey sent out. I have to say that the results are likely very skewed. The wording of the survey was not done in such a way to get the information you were really looking for. For example, there was no way for parents to state that they would prefer the school stay in hybrid format. The survey was stated in a way that sounded like the school would be going 5 days, and how would you want your student to attend them? Many parents have shared with me they were confused at how to answer the question because they preferred to stay hybrid, but that if the school was back 100%, they would not want their student there. In that case, being hybrid for their student wouldn't make sense because the numbers in class would still be higher. I think the wording saying when it is safe was also tricky for parents because some people do not feel like right now is a safe time. So the answer would not be the same. I think in the future, any surveys need to be much more carefully worded to ensure they are explicit and the answers reflect what people truly prefer.
Good
Thank
input.
you.
Thank you.
It is very good. I have a question, but it was from a bit ago. I think it's in reference to the 3 feet restrictions from Dan Morse. What's his first name that starts with D?
Dan
Yes,
Morse?
Dan, thank you.
Yep.
The question just says, are we talking federal CDC as well as state CDC? That's all it says. So I'm assuming that came right around the time we were talking about the socially distanced portion. So I think
They
he's
mirror each
asking-
other right now.
Yeah, so
Thank
now
you.
all federal and state are now 3 feet, correct?
Right, right.
And then I
Today.
have
Yeah.
As of today.
one more for now, which is from Gwen Clark. Some of the children are at risk and cannot have the vaccine. I think that considering the kids' mental and social crisis, lack of being able to learn in these situations for almost 2 years, 2 school years, has anyone lifted a backpack? I cannot. My granddaughter's is too heavy. So now there are back issues with kids. Schools and states all around us are opening or have been open, and our children are all falling behind on all levels. We need to have the kids back in person learning. It is at the point we are looking at moving so my granddaughter can attend in-person learning, and yes, she is high risk.
Thank you.
And that is all that I have for now.
Okay. We have more presentations?
No?
Okay, I didn't know if we had. So one of the things that we do need to consider is the MOU and the understanding of the need of a professional development day and the 10 calendar days.
And what about the school busing? Is that all figured?
Transportation,
in their plans?
we did talk about that, and I would invite any of the administrators to follow up on it, but with
I'm
regard...
just wondering if it's included in their plans already, so.
Well, it's a discussion. With regard to the high school, and Mr. Clifford, correct me if I miss anything here, in looking at the number of students who would require transportation at the high school level, it was minimal, and we're not looking at it being an impact at the high school level. So when you're looking at phasing it in, that's where you look at that data and determine what type of an impact is that going to be. And you heard the principals talk about if parents can drop children off, that would be helpful. So it's not fully known yet, but I think over the next couple of weeks, those numbers can be worked out. And again, depending upon what plan is approved tonight, let's just say, for example, we work out the MOU and the notice piece. You start back with 8th grade and 4th grade the week before vacation. You know, that'll be a good trial run. How many of those students are going to need the transportation, and what's that going to do to our transportation system? Is it going to require additional runs, a second run? You know, we looked at the worst case scenario. Are we going to have 3 different bus runs where kids get to school 8:30, get home 4:30? We certainly hope that's not going to be the case. But it is a consideration. We're on top of it. The good news is we're looking at our 2 drivers who are on who are on leave, should be back and ready to go by the time we bring students back.
Yes, and the 2 of the buses went back to a regular schedule this week or next week?
Yep, one driver who was temporarily out is back this week, so we'll knock on that.
Okay. So the professional development day, I know we heard from April, and we know that Dan could definitely use that the Friday before vacation because he would be going back with his full school. But Erica, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think honestly, I could probably go either way with the middle school. I talked to the 8th grade today. Really, it's 8th grade that would be mostly impacted because the teachers could use the Friday before vacation for the other grade levels to prepare and get some furniture back in their room over vacation, and then have Friday afternoon PLC time to, as we phase in, to do that, to do the more of the planning and setting up their classrooms as well. So I think that we can stagger it so it's not such a huge impact on maintenance. The grade level that would be mostly impacted if we did a district non-student day would be 8th grade, and so I talked to them about that today, and they were amenable to having their non-student day be after they get students back. If that was the case, if that's the way that we decide to go with that, if we did a district day. If we decide to do it per grade level, and April's in a little bit different situation than I am, where I have a little bit more solidified timeline than she does for grade levels. You know, that's really, 8th grade's really the only impacted grade level. The other grade levels could have a non-student day before vacation, and I think thoughtfully plan for what they need. And they've already started the planning process. We started that a while ago, knowing that these conversations were happening, and we would probably be looking.
Yeah.
I just want to mention, I did not have that same conversation with grade 4. I think that's important to note. I don't want to make an assumption. I did not have that conversation with grade 4.
So, not to have, you can answer from back there, you don't have to come back up. But if you were going to phase in, so what you're saying is, could still be that Friday before vacation, and all grade levels would be comfortable with that because it would give them a chance to have that day for planning?
Yeah, I think
Even
that would work. I mean, you know, so take seventh grade, for example, who's gonna be the last grade level to be
Right.
phased in. I still think that they could use that day to plan and be prepared for when they phase in, because the subsequent weeks during the PLC time on Friday afternoon, I would give them some of that time to plan as well. So I think that would be fine. I haven't had that conversation with every grade level. I did have it today with 8th grade.
Yeah.
Because I knew that was the grade it would impact the most. Because they could potentially get students before we were able to put that non-student in place.
So I'm just wondering about, like, furniture placement. If they're not 100% sure who's coming in, I'm just curious if it would make a difference, you know, by grade level, like April, if it would make more sense to have, I know it's difficult, and we talked about this with families, we talked about this in our MOU meeting too, is the consistency to that professional development day, because it does lend itself to needing that older sibling or somebody to, but it is kind of crucial piece to moving this ball forward. And so instead of making that a barrier, we may just have to accept that it needs to be fluid, possibly, with that professional day.
Make a professional day for the entire district.
But that's what we're saying, it's not going to work for everybody necessarily, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be as beneficial for the grades that aren't coming back until 2 and 3 weeks later.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they just need a professional day anyway, you know, even if it's not just for this.
Well, no, this was in the MOU agreement.
Yeah, yeah.
This is part of us strategically planning that start date. Go ahead.
I shared that because I feel
Yeah.
it's my job to advocate for what I think my teachers need, and that's
Right.
why I brought on that second opinion.
Right.
Just regard to that, just because I'm a little bit of a different situation than Mr. Clifford and Ms. Gavinelli. So I thought it was important to bring that up.
I'm just thinking, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I have a clarification question from a parent.
Okay.
Amy Atherton is asking for clarification on the CDC guidelines in regards to general areas. Is it 6-foot spacing in the hallways and the cafeteria for general areas, or it's just 6 feet when they're eating, correct?
When they're
Yeah,
masks
the-
on.
When they're
the-
masks
The
on.
minimum, the spacing needs to be 3 feet at all times, with the exception of, right now, with the exception of when students are eating lunch, because they're unmasked, they need to be 6 feet.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would ask, you didn't ask this, but the capacity limits
Right.
are also pertaining to schools, you know, the ones that just changed to 50%, I think on March 26th, and will change to 75% on May 24th, thank you. Those are pertaining to the general areas in the schools, so long as you can maintain that 3-foot spacing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. That might be what
Yep.
she heard.
Yep.
And they do make concessions for the occasional, they understand a teacher's gonna walk between desks.
Yes.
Occasionally,
It's,
it's,
think
it's,
about close contact.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
And
they're
that's
not
close
talking about
contact.
passing.
Right.
right,
Passing time is fine.
right.
Right.
Because it's a limited time.
Yes.
Right.
correct.
Okay, so the couple of things that we do need to consider when we're talking about this is the professional development day, and then also having the volunteers back in the schools, or I guess, the public back in the schools, and
Well, I think a couple things, and I heard Abby say this before, you know, and I put down a recommended motion, and I said to you when I sent it to you folks, that's going to be based upon your conversation tonight. So I heard Abby say a couple things, so maybe you're looking at separate pieces. One is to transition to the 3-foot standard. The second one is whether you adopt the plans or not, and that's probably the biggest challenge, because you get some different dates in there. But also the volunteer or substitute piece. Those are the 3 things that I heard that you thought you needed to take action on, correct?
I also think we need to take action on, as Jamie Reed brought up, and I had so many emails about end of the year plans too. We need to talk about that, and we need to discuss as a board some things about our graduations and proms and stuff like that.
I think it would be appropriate to get this one step in place and put that on the April
Good idea.
board meeting.
Yes.
That way,
Generally,
because that's
prom
only,
is
Right.
May.
I'm sorry.
Generally, prom is in May.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It'd be good if it was the end of May this year.
And the other piece that goes along with that is, on the DOE website, I didn't look at it today, but the last time I
Guidelines
looked,
of-
there was a link that's not a hot link yet, which is talking about coming soon, specific guidelines for your end-of-year activities.
Oh, way
So
to tease you on that,
I
right?
can tell you, our
But
principals
it's not
are-
up yet.
But our principals are already thinking about it. I mean, they're already
Yeah.
discussing it. And again, this is taking a little bit of a priority piece. But when those come, that's certainly going to be informative to how they can make it happen. And as you've heard them say, they all want kids back.
Right.
We all want to see the end-of-year opportunities be more like normal. So, I think Mrs. Bowles had a question or a comment she
Yeah,
wanted to.
absolutely.
So I just think it's important to talk about HCTC if you're going to vote about a district-wide professional development day. Because we had a staff meeting today, and we've been 5 days a week for a while now. And for my staff, they had plenty of notice that we were going to 5 days a week. We did a phased-in approach, but they didn't have a PD day. They did things after school. They used the generous hours you were given. And so today, what they talked about is they have absolutely no problem with teachers having a day to plan. Their spaces are completely different than our spaces. We have lab spaces. It's just very different. So they get it. They do not want a PD day. They need every single day they can get with students for certification exams. We only have like 45 days with some of our high schools with seniors left, and we need every single one of them. And if we take away one day now, you have to remember that for our school, we have all the high schools. So we would now be changing our calendar for these other high schools. And for Bucksport High School, who is still 100% hybrid, we'd be taking one of their days away, and they are already only attend 2 days a week.
Okay, that's great to know.
So I just want to make a point. We have no problem with K-12 having a PD day. We're fully in support of that. But for my staff, we would really rather not have a day off.
Not a district-wide.
Not,
You don't hear that
Yeah.
after
No, they need their students, and I know that that's complicated for Ellsworth High School kids. And we could work on busing for them, like we have these 3 days, but we desperately need every day with especially the seniors to get them ready for their CERT exams. They've already lost clinical hours and too much time.
That's interesting.
We can't give up another day.
Okay.
Thank
So it
you.
would appear that it would be more likely and more beneficial if this went by grade and section. So would that sound like 8th grade, 4th grade, and the high school? And then, is that,
Or they ask in those grades as presented?
I'm looking at April because I'm trying to figure out how logistically
Well,
that's
'cause
going to happen.
I think from what, and April's going to, but what I'm hearing is, if you're looking at the high school, and, Mr. Clifford's presentation is bringing the students back the Monday after break. So certainly, that non-student day would make sense to be the Friday prior to break.
Right.
Ms. Gabrielli talked about the 8th grade, and again, this would be a conversation we'd end up having to have with the MOU group.
Right.
That they would be amenable to having their day, even though they might start with kids on the 12th, the week before break, having their non-student day that Friday.
That
So-
Friday.
But I was also very clear that Mrs. Clifford has not had that specific conversation with her.
I did not have that conversation with fourth grade.
fourth grade, okay.
Because they were wanting to come back the week before break. The other thing, I don't know if it could be something general, if you're considering what I had talked about, be something as general as, the Friday before students return for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that. I
For
don't
that
know if that's what
grade.
you were looking for, if
that
you're
grade.
going to consider that option.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great
Thank you,
compromise.
April.
Thank you, April.
I have another question. Oops, sorry, Beth. Are we trading this professional day with another professional day, or are we tacking on a day to the end of the school year?
I don't think we have to tack on a day, do we?
Right now, my understanding is there is still the waiver of the instructional days.
Okay.
So, Kelly, we have not had a conversation about tacking a day on to the end of the year. I think the focus now is finding a way to make sure that students and staff are fully prepared for kids coming back. I can verify that piece on the waiver.
That's how I understand it too.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah,
Helen.
okay, great.
That's a good question.
I just forwarded you all another email from Annie in which she has included a link to the CDC's website. And I see where she's talking about, because on there, there's also an image about halfway down through the text that says CDC continues to recommend at least 6 feet difference between adults in the school building and between adults and students in common areas such as lobbies and auditoriums where masks can't be worn. So the hallway doesn't count as a.
Well, I think the difference
But that's
is, if I'm hearing,
adults.
the adults still have the 6-foot spacing requirement between themselves and between themselves and students.
That's not going to change.
Right, I'm just
No.
looking at the way that, I could see how this could be confusing,
Mhm.
because on the CDC's website, it has it as separate bullets. It's not like between adults and students, comma, in common areas, it's like, bullet is
Thank
between
you.
adults and the building and students. And then the next bullet is in common areas such as school lobbies.
Yep.
Oh, and it was Amy Atherton, I'm sorry, Annie. It was Amy, not Annie.
Oh, yep, I completely understand. I
Yeah.
think we've all reviewed the CDC guidelines. I think we're going to go back to what we were saying before, is the guidelines for return to school for the state of Maine was 3-foot minimum, 6-foot maximum. When we adopted our hybrid plan, we were at a 6-foot.
Right.
We
And
are
now we've
able
kind
to
of-
go to a 3-foot. It is within the guidelines, and that's what is being proposed.
Right.
Okay?
And we're still
For-
keeping.
For
For
students.
students.
Yeah.
Adults still have to maintain, you heard one of the principals, maybe 2 of them say, in their classrooms in traffic flow, they still have to be able to maintain that 6-foot distance.
They've got us.
And
for
once
staff
they're-
and students.
Once they are fully vaccinated, are they able to be within that?
Nope.
No, that doesn't
It's
change.
still-
That
it still
hasn't
stays
changed
that
yet.
way.
That hasn't
Okay.
changed yet.
Yet, and we don't
Okay.
know. This is all, like the vaccinations where that's rolling out, we have no idea.
Yeah, that might change.
I think
Right.
that's important for the community to
That could be
understand
different
too.
tomorrow.
It's very
These
fluid.
conversations in the committee meetings have been that this changes sometimes hourly, daily. We're going with what the current guidelines are, and that's been our recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, hold on, I have one more. Jasmine Ireland, will elective and special classes be given in any additional assistance, guidance, or considerations? For example, dance classes still require 6 feet of social distance, vocal and instrument students must be 10 feet apart. I'm unsure of the requirements for PE, but it seems like we have some curriculum that will have unique needs that may look different than more traditional lecture courses.
And I
that's
would
it.
imagine that's been considered. Dan, I don't know if you want to. Those things will definitely have
Yeah,
different
so
situations.
they're the same guidelines that were in the fall. And so that's why, like band, for instance, they were out on the football field. We have a big tent out on the football field. Mr. Calandro and I sectioned off at, I think it was 14 feet at the time. So we'll handle it the same way we did in the fall.
And you were saying that most of PE is gonna be outside
Yeah.
very soon.
Mhm.
Very soon.
Which helps, yeah.
Can I just ask a quick question about theater real quickly? I saw they're finally coming back to the stage, and that's so exciting. So are they going to have a production that we can see indoors? Are they going to have it outdoors? Is it going to be Zoom? Do we know anything about that yet?
We're not sure right now. I've had some conversations with Jasmine because, one of the things we're looking at a problem is renting a big tent and putting it on the junior parking lot. And that could be possibly used for NHS inductions. It could be used for performances. It could be used for the HCTC awards. That will be up for probably a week and a half or 2 weeks. So there could be an activity under that tent every single night. So,
Yeah.
we're looking
Utilize
at
it while it's there, right?
different possibilities.
And I actually really, really suggest that we go for 2 tents. Because if we do 2 tents, we can split that prom. We could double our numbers for people who are allowed to go.
Oh, seriously?
And you don't always know for sure if that one tent is going to make it in time. You order 2 tents from 2 different companies, and then you're like almost guaranteed one of them's going to show up in time.
Yeah.
You don't know when a Suez Canal situation's going to get your stuff slowed down there.
I think
But-
the availability is there. We
Yeah.
usually use Wallace for, yeah.
Jen, before we can I just say, we're at 5 minutes of 8.
Yep,
Board consensus to continue after 8.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
hopefully not long after.
Yeah.
No. I think we just need to
think we're
nail
good.
down some of these pieces. Do you have any other comments?
No, just, I don't know if Ms. Gabbianelli or Ms. Clifford have anything to add in regards to specials. I think they're on a trimester by trimester basis right now anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
And those specials are probably following that same guideline that was set in the fall anyway. That hasn't changed, it appears.
Perfect. I don't have any more right now.
Okay. So what we need to do is, I think, work on a motion that would include that the PD days to be used the Friday before a grade returns.
Yeah.
And then that would include the Friday before, and we can talk that out. We'll need to have another meeting with the EEA, correct? To discuss
Yeah.
if 8th grade
It's-
and 4th grade agreed, and it was in the plans that they agreed that that's gonna be okay.
Yes.
Is that okay? So that would be in addition to,
Wait,
oh, go.
I mean, I'm confident that my 8th grade teachers want their day to be
Yes.
the Friday before break. So if that is agreeable, are you saying, I just want to
Well,
clarify.
The Friday before break, yes.
Okay,
For the PD day.
yes.
We just need the 10 calendar days,
Mhm.
the 10 school days, excuse me. I want to make sure that we are under the agreement that that would be prior to what we had agreed in the MOU.
Sure.
So that conversation needs to be had.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the question would be, in a conversation would be, if we have a group of teachers who are willing to
They're
say,
willing.
we've had that,
Right.
is that something we would collaborate on and agree to?
Yeah.
All right, thank you for the clarification. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure, because I want to advocate for things that I've had conversations with
Yeah.
teachers about, so.
And if they're all set,
Yep.
that's great. I just want to make sure that we're following what we need to with the EA and making sure that everybody's comfortable with that agreement.
So theirs would be the Friday before vacation, so not the Friday before they. students
Right,
come
so.
back?
They had agreed to
So
that.
they've
Okay.
agreed.
I just, my brain was.
Yep, no, in talking with 8th grade today, they've agreed that the 12th to start kids works for them, and that they are willing to take their PD day that is part of the MOU the Friday before vacation. Correct. Yep, with
And we-
other grade levels.
We could have that set in part of the motion, that it be the Friday before they are going to return, with the exception of 8th grade and the high school, and then that gives April a chance to go back and talk to her 4th grade. And if they would like to fall in line with the same thing, and take that Friday kind of after, if not, then maybe we're able to do it the Friday before. So I think that works out smoothly for everybody, and then it gives every grade that Friday before they return to having students at 3 feet. Does that make sense? I don't know who's going to make that motion and put that in there, but.
I'm making some notes, whichever one you make.
I say make a motion for what Jen just said. Okay, so we have the professional development day piece, and then are we looking to, does the board want to have a separate piece talking about volunteers being back into the
Yep.
to the building?
And possibly a separate piece on the 3-foot piece, because that's a change.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Okay,
3
so I
different
think we should start
motions.
with the 3 foot.
That's good, because that's the way I've got it in
Yeah.
order on my paper.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. That's
And-
exactly what I saw, Dan. I saw too. for
And that was
frequent
already
visits.
on the paper. So
Yes.
There you
Yep.
go. All
There
right,
it is.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve a 3-foot distance between students in-person instruction consistent with the main DHHS, CDC, and DOE health and safety requirements, and to improve the increase of in-person instruction plans for EES, EMS, and EHS as
Oh, hang
presented.
on.
Hold on, back up.
Well,
What?
hold on, no, wait, don't back up yet, Kelly, wait. Wait. Let me just put this out there, no, let me put this out there, because you may be able to do these two in one motion if you choose. So I think Kelly has covered the 3-foot distance
Yep.
between students, okay? But she's also included thus far, approved the increase in in-person instruction plans for the 3 grade spans as presented.
Yep.
If you were to add to that, Kelly, with non-student days to take place the Friday prior to the return of that grade level, pending conversation with the association, would that cover what you're trying to accomplish with those two?
Yep,
I think so.
I
Okay?
think it would, because
That's
then it gives
exactly
us
what she
that.
just said.
Okay, so help me out, maybe, I might need some coaching. Okay. With non-student days prior to the return of in-person instruction
For that,
Per grade.
For that grade level.
per grade level.
or building, in the, yeah, yep.
Okay.
I second that motion.
So,
Abby's just glad you didn't have to do it. All right, any further discussion on that piece?
I do think that it is important for parents who don't feel safe sending their kids back to school, that the high school will continue to have the hybrid and the
Synchronous.
fully remote options. And then K through 8 will have the fully remote options. So if you don't feel safe sending your child to school with the 3 feet of social distancing, you do still have another option.
Right.
So I just wanted to just reiterate that, you know, for those parents who are feeling like they're not ready for that yet, that we're not just leaving them in the dark, there's still going to be education.
And
for
I
their
think we
kids.
should add too in that piece that get in touch with your building administrator if you would like to start to maybe, if you've been fully remote and you'd like to try the hybrid,
Yes.
you know, for a little bit of time and there's
Yes,
room.
for this couple weeks.
Right.
Get in touch with the teacher or the building administrator so that they can maybe piece that together for you and help you adjust, because I think there will be an adjustment period.
Yeah.
for sure.
And I would also reiterate, if you're having concerns, our administrators are fantastic in answering questions. It's harder in this forum because there's so many of us and so many different questions and so many things, but they're working on this every day, and they are very willing to talk to anyone who has concerns, student or child, or parent.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I think Beth makes good points, but the other part that the principals all talked about in their plans and their proposals was that when you make your choice, that's the choice
Yes.
you move
Yes.
forward with for the balance of the
Right,
year.
right.
That's
Right.
included in your,
Yes.
okay.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Just
And
wanted-
everybody should keep in mind, this is us making a plan. Everything is fluid.
Right.
Everything is subject to what is going on with COVID that day. It is
Because if
not
we
bring
waited
kids
for-
back at all
If we waited
costs.
for the perfect scenario, we would be waiting.
No, we need a plan in place, so saying at the end of April and these couple weeks coming up that we are safe for return for those students that we can.
I think it's also safe to say that a communication can go out, Dan, that explains the dates, so that this gets all reiterated again for,
I've been watching our
For
principals
staff.
in the back of the chambers, and I think they've already got that written up.
Okay.
Yes.
And Erica already said that. She's like, I've got letters ready to go.
I think that's the
I might have got
interesting
teary-eyed.
piece, is just because it is a staggered piece. And I
Yeah.
just want families and the community to understand that this is sort of a phased-in approach. We had talked about this before, and it definitely is a phased-in approach.
Yeah.
And it might affect certain things, but
Right.
bear with us, this is.
And if you have
you
students
know,
in 7th grade and maybe kindergarten, you may have to stand by for a little bit.
That's right,
until you
that's
have
right.
A for sure plan.
All right, any further discussion on that piece?
No.
Seeing none. All those in favor?
5-0.
5-0.
Thank you. May I make one quick announcement for the public? Because we've been getting some questions. We wanted to wait until the board took action. You know, the hybrid calendar that we've had all year, the maroon and gray, it expires Friday. We've had parents asking about it. So what we intend to do is, because there's still going to be hybrid for a period of time, and there will still be some students, we will plan to distribute it tomorrow so that people have it and know what it's going to be moving forward, along with an explanation. But just to get that out there for people, because we've had some parents that are asking for it. We'll get it out, people will know. But it's not going to change the plans that were just voted on.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, okay, excellent.
Good to know.
All right.
So
So in
volunteers-
addition to that, we need the
volunteers.
volunteer.
Yeah, oh
The-
my gosh,
one of
I'm
the
so
one of the
relieved to
things
get
that,
that part over with.
and I would welcome our administrators who were part of the meeting this morning to weigh in on this, but the feeling was on a couple of things. One is, just like with students coming into the building, staff coming into the building, anybody coming in, whether it's a sub or a volunteer who's approved, needs to go by the health and safety requirements, including the symptom check before you come in.
And they do this at their own risk.
Well, as a substitute, you're technically an employee, so that's one
A
piece.
volunteer, because we're kind of talking
Yeah.
about.
Well, but also go along, what we talked about was if, and I'll go back to Jen Barrowletti's comment at the committee meeting. And Jen, if you're listening and you're able to do that, or you want to apply to be a sub, go ahead. We might be able to use it for a couple hours a
We can't
day.
see them, just so everybody knows, our committee is here via Zoom, but,
But-
no, we can,
but-
there we go, April's bringing them back.
But Abby, I think that would be one piece. As far as the volunteers, one of the things that we talked about was, and I thought April made a really good point, was we always have a huge list, particularly to EMS. You know, the number of applications we get are in the hundreds each year. Recommendation for the administrators was that pending approval of volunteers coming back, following the health and safety guidelines, that they could start with the lists and start to look for matches of what we need and the need, because, you know, you guys have all filled them out. You put your needs and interests on there. That would be the recommendation. Principals, administrators, was that consistent with our conversation this morning?
Okay, so you can go
There-
back to last year and then,
And we can run the background checks that we do very easily. It's just a matter of putting them in a form.
Now,
It's easy.
Dan, for those who want to apply to be a substitute teacher, how would they go about doing that?
Contact our office, cheller@ellsworthschools.org, and she can put you in place to have an application mailed to you. Now that you've voted, we can also re-up our substitute ad on serving schools in other areas where I think we have that
indicate.
posted there. Or call the office, 664-7100, and we will have an application sent to you.
Awesome. And fingerprinting is required process.
Substitute, yes. For the volunteer piece, we do through the state of Maine another background check, which is usually back within 24 to 48 hours.
Let's just talk real quickly about board members. We've had a lot of, ups and downs about us volunteering or not. I think there's a lot of volunteer opportunities in which present themselves where we're not working directly under the superintendent, like wiping tables, running food around the school. I think there's a lot of things here that I think would provide us the opportunity to be in the school and to be helping out and just doing some of these small tasks that could take a little bit of burden, maybe so a teacher can get their lunch break.
So
Would be
I
nice.
think most of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of you have filled out the volunteer application. How many of you filled one out for last year?
I think that
I
did.
know.
And
I've done it every couple
you've
years.
been able to volunteer, so,
And we are technically employees of the district. We do get a paycheck for that reason. So it's kind of a,
not for that reason, but yes.
well,
Yeah.
but as
It's
as a volunteer, you're not prohibited from serving as a volunteer,
Right,
so long as,
Right.
so long as there's not a supervisory piece.
Right.
So-
right, but I think but the thing is, there's a lot of little pieces that are not supervisory
Right.
that we could lend a hand in,
Yes.
But-
you
but-
know?
I
but
would
it-
say all of you that have extra time,
Yeah.
Because we have so much.
But I think that's,
put your name on the volunteer list.
I think that's the piece, the principals all have these, and again, I don't know how many Dan has at the high school. Typically, we have far fewer volunteers at the high school.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But K through 8, we've got tons of great volunteers. You guys are on the list, so the principals, in their free time, will start looking at what the needs are.
In
and-
their free time. Sorry.
Okay, so that motion that needs to be made was that we were not allowing the public in the school. How,
Well, if-
So to be opening the school back up to volunteers.
to volunteers?
To approved volunteers,
Approved volunteers.
as
That's a good
identified
way
by
to put it.
administrators.
Right.
And
And
I
I
would
would
say
assume
and
that it would
volunteer.
be on the days that they were invited and times that they were invited to be there. Like if I'm a volunteer.
I'm going to look at the
just-
principals. Is that what you're thinking?
That I couldn't just.
What Beth just said?
That I wouldn't be a volunteer, that I could just show up anytime, any day that I want to.
You're gonna need to reach out and
Right, they
and
would
make
know
that
I was coming.
communication.
But I think school board members need to be allowed in the buildings at this point.
Yeah, which I think what Dan
We're
was saying, is that we're
You're volunteers.
volunteers.
Right.
That we can definitely go in
I can
that
agree with that.
aspect of things. and-
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
You sure can.
Does that go for volunteer coaches as well?
Yes.
I can, and this is where it's easier because sports being outside, we did
Yeah.
have volunteer coaches outside last
Yes.
fall,
Yes.
outside this spring. See no reason for that to change.
Okay.
But they may indeed need to volunteer coach indoors, though.
Right.
Yeah.
that
And
time,
that
so we
is
need to
since
make
they
sure that's
approved.
still
And that goes back to the
allowed.
approved volunteer piece.
Okay.
Had that conversation with Travis Wood actually earlier today.
Okay, so all volunteers, and that includes coaches?
Thank you.
Is there anybody we're leaving out?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So would we, okay. So I would make a motion that I'll start allowing volunteers back into the school that are approved by the administrators and are welcomed into the school at designated times and days as approved by the administrators.
How about as approved and scheduled by building administrators?
Perfect.
Is that what you were saying, Beth?
It's exactly what I was saying. I was like working it out out loud.
I'm sorry if I stepped in the middle of that. I could almost hear that coming out.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
It was in there, it's just stuck.
All right, thank you, Beth.
Can I ask a real quick question about?
You can
volunteer
after
position?
it's been seconded, and then we can have discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Now you
Okay,
can,
go ahead.
Abby.
Do we have enough people doing the car loop and stuff like that in the morning? Do we need volunteers for that? It's another outdoor one, so I'm trying to think of like, do you need people for that to maybe free up staff to do other things? Because being outdoors, it might be something people are comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
I know,
I think-
can't hear from the back.
I think potentially there's, as we bring more students back, there's a number. I'll say the car loop has been fairly manageable this year without everybody coming at once.
Right.
It hasn't been what we've seen in the past, so.
But that's going to possibly be.
Yes,
Right.
so with everybody coming back, that may change, and especially where we're putting a plea out to parents to, hey, can you please drop your students off and pick them up? Certainly that may change, so there may be some need for that. And we may need additional, riders, bus riders with other kids.
Good to know.
So that would free up some of those people that are doing those duties right now to be able to be those riders. So potentially, yes.
Okay, good to know.
So I wonder
that
if it
could
would
be-
be helpful if, after this, maybe the administrators could put together a list of where they would be needing those volunteers, and it could be posted somewhere so that parents can see that maybe on the Facebook page, or the PTF could share it, so that that just gets out there.
And
Is
maybe
there-
save you the time of going through some of those.
Right.
Searching for to see what matches up with someone. Someone may say, hey, I did mine last year. And you can find it and say, yeah, you can volunteer.
All right, thank you.
Because you guys have so much free time.
I know.
That's right, Beth.
Somebody else posted on Facebook. Okay. Any further discussion on the volunteer piece? All right, all those in favor?
Excellent, thank you.
That concludes all of the items under new business. And thank you, everybody. Like I mentioned, our administrators, everyone has put an awful lot of hard work into this. And I did mention too, our committee is present. The public can't see them, but they are on via Zoom.
I keep looking at the screen.
Yeah, I know, but they are here, and anybody who couldn't attend in person is listening in, and they put a lot of thought, and it was a good collaborative effort.
I just turned my computer off. I can turn it back on, but I wonder if it would be worth mentioning the people who served on that, just publicly. If you don't have it right there,
I do.
I'll
No.
log right back on.
I can think of some.
Do I? Eek. No, I'll miss somebody. Can we just say thank you to all the committee members?
It was a long one.
It was, I wrote down who was going to be in person. That's all I had today, so I'm afraid I'll miss somebody. Hold tight. While Dan's checking for that, I can give the calendar and announcements. So we do have a school board meeting Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, 6 o'clock in the City Hall Council Chambers. And then our workshop for April is Tuesday, April 27th, 6 o'clock here in the City Hall Council Chambers. Did that give you enough time?
Perfect. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
All right.
So just for the members of the public, and special thanks to all the folks who served on this committee. The committee included 2 board members, Jen Alexander and Abby Miller, administrators, Dan Clifford, Erica Gabinelli, April Clifford, Amy Bowles, Rachel Corman Ramos, Carol Amakecker Murphy, school nurse at the high school and HCTC, Jackie Sandone, teachers from Ellsworth High School, Heidi Omlor, Ellsworth Middle School, Matt Downs, Ellsworth Elementary School, Rebecca Hatt. HCTC, Michelle Cody. Representing special education teachers, Lisa Backman. Representing the Ellsworth Education Association, Tristan Bates. And parents, one parent representative from a group that approached Jen and I a while back, Kelly Casey. A parent representing Ellsworth High School, Tim Bland. Parent representing Ellsworth Middle School, Heather Haskell. Parent representing EES, Jen Baraletti. And parent representing Hancock County Technical Center, Alan Smith. Thank you all for your part and your support and your advocacy for what's in the best interest of students. You certainly helped move this plan forward and help us move to what's going to be a successful,
That's right.
exciting school year for our students and staff.
That's right.
Yay.
I'm really excited.
All right. Having no further business, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
Thank you. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
8:16.
We are adjourned.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Mics are still on.
Good job, folks.
Mics are still live, just so you're aware.
Yeah, that's what I just said too.